Lexi Fickenscher. I am the handcraft teacher and the seed librarian at the Montessori School of Denver. And I'm going to catch up on my slides. And I'm also going to set my timer so that I keep it.
While she's doing that, I'm Rebecca Newburn, and I'm with the Richmond Grows Seed Lending Library in Richmond. And I'm also a middle school science teacher and do the seed library at Hull Middle School. And Debbie Benrubi is from University of San Francisco, and she is also a seed librarian and librarian. And she'll be helping out in chat.
Great. So the Montessori School of Denver, a quick overview. So we are a toddler through 8th grade school. We have a little over 340 students. We're located in Denver, in the southeastern part of Denver. And our urban farm program is about 9 years old. The school is over 50 years old. We're the oldest Montessori school in Denver. The urban farm program specifically is about 9 years old. And for urban farm, just to put it in context, we are in an urban area. So this is farming in an urban context in terms of raised beds, hydroponics. The campus is about 4 acres. So it's not that we have a large farm with animals. This is farming in an urban context. So the urban farm program spans across the entire school from toddler all the way through middle school. So on the lower left hand, there's pictures of some kindergarteners who are saving seed. The upper right-hand corner is a picture of our hydroponics farm, and I will talk about that in a moment. So for the toddler to primary, that's about 2 to 5 year olds, that's their introduction to working in the soil, to seed saving, working with seeds. For lower elementary, which is 1st through 3rd grade, their urban farm program consists of hatching fertilized chicken eggs, having worm bins in the classroom for breaking down food waste. For upper elementary, which is 4th and 5th grade, that's when we introduce hydroponics to them. They have tower gardens, which are freestanding vertical cylinders on which they grow food. That's their first experience with hydroponics. Then our middle school is 6th to 8th grade. And that is when the students have access to the vertical farm. So it's a shipping container that was gutted and rebuilt to grow food hydroponically. That is the way, as we're in Denver, our outdoor growing season starts in April, May, and it's done by October with a hard frost. So the hydroponics is our way of continuing growing all year round. We have 7 outdoor raised beds, they're soil beds. And the middle schoolers, their involvement is they start the seeds, they grow plants in the raised beds, they use the harvest from those beds for a fall farm to table potluck, which is where all middle school families participate. We have something called Maria's Market. So it's named after Maria Montessori, and it's where middle schoolers make things. Some of what they make is using what they harvest from the gardens and then sell it. Maria's Market is a way for students to basically learn about microeconomy to create and run a business. So they grow herbs and then make mixed herb salts, and that's one of the items that they sell. Middle schoolers also are involved in our seed library. So they do a lot of the hands-on work in terms of organizing it. The last thing that the middle schoolers do as part of the microeconomy is that they have a seedling sale every May, and they sell easily about 1,000 to 1,500 seedlings to the greater, so Montessori School of Denver's MSD, to the greater MSD community, so to parents and families and staff. So back in 2017, when we started up the urban farm program, as we were growing in the raised beds and walking around campus, there were so many seeds. And just obviously what happens when you grow, there's a ton of seed production. And so we started doing seed saving with students, and the seed supply just built up and built up and built up. And we realized we had to do something to organize it. So this was our first draft of our seed library. We are currently on our second version of the seed library, which I will talk about. So the first format is this. We have 3 of these cabinets. So the cabinets we bought as DVD cabinets. They're a great size for holding seed packets. And what we did was all of the seeds we would package in individual envelopes that were labeled and barcoded. The seed library is located in our school library, and we originally thought it was really important for database tracking about how many seed packets are checked out. And we had made it clear to students and families, there's not a limit on how many seeds you can check out. Initially, because we had such an abundance of seeds between collecting seeds on campus and seed companies donating. Remember, this is back in 2017, 2018, and seed companies were really generous with donating seeds to schools. So we were letting people know the seeds are to check out. You don't need to return them. If you're not comfortable with saving seeds, we just want to get the seeds out there. The shelves here are organized they're color coded by the ease with which, if you want to save seed, that you can. So the green labels like bean, letting people know if you want to do seed saving, this is a good place to start. And then it goes to yellow for a bit more hands-on work involved. And then the red, as we would suggest you not save seeds from these. It was us absolutely putting the cart before the horse. Families were just getting used to the idea of the seed library, and the thought of them actually having the information to save seed was a little bit too much, we realized in hindsight. For all of the commercial seed packets, for all the commercial seeds that we received, we repackaged them into these small envelopes, and then we saved the seed packets. And at the top of this cabinet, you can see they are grouped by type of plant, and then we had a little binding on the side. So if someone is going through a lettuce drawer and they see we easily had at least 15 varieties of lettuce, you could pull out the seed packet, read what the variety is, and then go to the little booklet to open it up to read more information about it. We have 3 cabinets, one for vegetables, one for flowers, and one for herbs. So pros and cons and lessons learned from this, that the pros were, it was a clean area. It was very well organized. And the cons that we realized was it was so much work to keep this running, to keep to label all of the envelopes. Here you can see some students who are working on labeling the envelopes. There are coin envelopes that we used, barcoding them, having the librarian enter the barcodes into the school library database. We just realized it wasn't worth all of that effort and that we needed to change. So around the beginning of the pandemic, we realized with the school shut down, we have all these seeds and no way to get them out to the families, and that we really needed to rethink about how we ran our seed library. So the amount of work for packaging all of those seeds, we realized we had to change. And the choice of seeds was too large. People would get overwhelmed by a selection of 15 different varieties of seeds. We're a toddler through 8th grade program. The biggest chunk of our families are families with younger age students. And also for our population, it was too soon to push seed saving. We really needed to take a step back and think like, what are really our goals that we want to focus on now, knowing that those goals can change in the future. And during the pandemic, the school shut down for 3 months, and then we came back in person in the fall of 2020. We were a locked campus, so no parents were allowed to come on campus. We had cohorts so that there was no mixing of classrooms. And so while we were really lucky to be on campus, it was tough It was challenging getting that interaction to get students comfortable to come into the library to start selecting seeds. Sorry. All right, so this is when we thought, when I sat down with staff and with the middle schoolers and we brainstormed on, this is how we've run it. Just because we've run it this way doesn't mean this is how we need to continue running it. Like, what are our goals? What are the things that we want to get from our seed library? How can we make it better? So the first thing was accessibility. So accessibility for students, families, faculty, and staff. And basically the first thing was getting the seeds out into our community, into the hands of our community members. That was a really important thing. And recognizing that in an urban environment, most of our families are used to buying seedlings, planting seedlings, and we wanted to make people more comfortable just getting seeds into their hands and realizing you can plant seeds in your garden and you can grow from seed. It's not that you have to go to a store to buy seedlings and limit your choice by that you actually have a really much wider variety of what you can grow in your garden when you start from seed. Also, in terms, we wanted to, well, what we have been doing well is incorporating seed work into a range of classes. Specifically, our younger classes are 3 to 6 year olds. So we've done, the lower left-hand picture is an example of prediction of having a group of, this was a group of 3 to 5 year olds. And we shared the appearance of different types of seeds. And then we had students predict which one do you think will germinate or sprout the first? And so here it's marked off which seed it is. You can see where the carrot seed, the bean already grew past the carrot label. So students did predictions, and then we put it on the different seeds, labeled them, wet paper towel, taped it to a window where it got a fair amount of sun. And then the students watched as the seeds sprouted. Sorry about that. Which was a ton of fun doing this. Another thing that we've done is making seed paper. So one thing that we've been working on is reducing waste on campus. So when the business office would shred paper, we would take that shredded paper, put it in a blender with water, pour it on a screen, and then sprinkle seeds on top to make seed paper so that the students could then go and share that seed paper with others. Bean seed saving is always really popular. So we grow beans, let them dry in the pods, then we go in the classroom, put the beans, the dried pods on a tarp, and then the students stomp on them. And they have so much fun doing that. So it breaks apart the dried pods, and then the students working on fine motor skills pick out the individual bean seeds, set them in a bowl, and then we take the tarp and we take it outside and we all hold along the edges of the tarp and shake it to let all of the chaff and the dried bean pods fly away. And it's a really fantastic thing to do. And also that the faculty and staff have access to seeds throughout the year so that they can do this in the middle of winter or at the end of fall, that this is all available to them to use when they can incorporate it into their classroom lessons. The other thing is also for the younger students, it's a great way for students, if usually we end up having bean seeds, it's a big mix of varieties, and having them separated by color or by size or by shape. So for education, this, we want to increase seed starting knowledge. That's the goal eventually. We first want to improve access to seeds, comfort with handling seeds and working with seeds, and then moving towards seed starting knowledge. I also wrote decrease seed starting hesitancy. This is one thing that I've noticed over the years as I've taught gardening classes, both to younger students and then to parents with the younger students. When we talk about seed starting or seed saving, I'm always met with enthusiasm and curiosity and excitement by the students. And when I teach this to the parents, to adults, people tend to be more reserved and worried about oh, I'm going to mess something up. Oh, I'm going to do something wrong. So we really want to move towards that point where we can get the adults as curious and enthusiastic about seed starting and seed saving as the children are. And then also to incorporate seed saving so that eventually our seed library, we will be getting returns back from the families. All right, so the seed library. So starting from last fall going forward, we've moved away from the cabinets, we've moved away from the envelopes. It's glass jars with lids. We still have the 3 types of seeds: vegetables, herbs, and flowers. The glass jars also is good, as we had construction last summer and we had a mouse infestation, and we lost at least 1/5 of our seeds to mice because of the paper envelope. So switching over to glass has been a good move for many reasons. It's going to be a self-serve now. So there are still envelopes with pre-printed labels, and the measuring spoons that we have are all a 1/4 teaspoon and smaller, just so that people are a little bit more mindful of the amount of seeds that they take. So the self-serve is going to remove that tedious work from what the middle schoolers have been doing for years and actually put it on the families then, so that they fill out this pre-printed form, serve themselves the seeds, and then use those seeds. We've also reduced the selection. So 15 varieties of lettuce is too much. So we've decided to narrow things down to say 3 varieties of lettuce. Our goal also is to transition to locally grown seeds. We have used up a large portion of the donations from seed companies, and just over the years, we've used those up and growing them in our raised beds and doing work in classrooms. And so what's nice is we've had this natural transition. So we're ending up with more locally grown seeds. I have a handful of families who do seed saving and bring their seeds in. And then I also, within my own garden, do a fair amount of seed saving. All right, and the one last thing that I wanted to mention was, having worked on the seed library for these years and getting these experiences has been great, and has opened my eyes to other forms, other things that could be used in the library. My job initially was the farm manager, and over the years, and especially with COVID, there was more interest. Students showed interest in things like handcrafting, urban homesteading, and I have a fair amount of those skills. So my job ended up transitioning to a handcraft teacher. So I now teach full-time sewing, hand sewing, machine sewing, knitting, weaving, crocheting, and which has really been interesting because there is a really significant portion of the student population here who are so interested in it. I have the number of 2nd grade boys who are into crocheting right now is stunning. It's fantastic. So with the seed library, I was thinking, what if we have a craft library? So we are actually now, next to the seed library, we are starting up a craft library so that students can also check out craft materials, yarn, fabric, buttons, and tools as well, so that they can bring those things home. Again, to increase accessibility so that parents don't have to pay for something that might be a hobby that people might lose interest in, a student might lose interest in a couple of months. So for me, I really never would have thought of a craft library had it not been for this experience with running the seed library for these years. All right, and that is.
Okay, I'm gonna go switch over. Hi, thank you. And you also do, I don't think you mentioned it, but a lot more dyes in your collection now, but we can talk about that later.
Yes. Yep, I do. Yep, we do flowers for dyeing as well.
Great. Okay, and how is that looking for people? Yes. Yep, can you see that? Can you see my okay, great. Hi, so I am Rebecca Newburn. I am the the co-founder of the Richmond Grows Seed Lending Library in Richmond, California, and I am also a 6th grade science teacher. So I'm going to be talking more about my experience as a science teacher with my students. And I think it's really important to kind of ground it in, like Lexi was saying, is like, why do we do this? Like, what is our thing? And for me, my seed teacher, Bill McDorman, kind of said this one time, and it just hit every single cell in my body, which is like, what are you doing now that has any relevance to 1,000 years from now? And the inclusion of seeds and seed saving into my personal life, but also into what I do in my classroom, I think has significance and meaning. And as Lexi mentioned, when kids put their hands in a pile of beans or stomp on beans for the first time, it just awakens something in us that, you know, maybe some of us have forgotten because our families have forgotten to do that recently. So I'm going to tell a little bit about my journey with my students. So this is our seed library. Like Lexi, we are just in a revisioning phase as well. But this is what it looks like right now. And we have we're almost 100% locally grown seed. And that comes from partially because I do the Richmond Grows Seed Lending Library, but we do have a school garden, although we don't have water in the school garden. So that really limits what we can save because we have a very short rainy season here. But we also have it kind of you can see there's like stars. Those are the easy stuff to save, like the beans and the lettuce and tomatoes. And then down at the bottom is the more difficult stuff that might require hand pollination. And all of these links are going to be shared with you. Our presentation is going to be shared with you. So there's lots of links in here in my presentation, but all of this is going to be available after the presentation, and we'll also email it out as well. So kind of how did we start the seed library? My students were doing a project called Mission Sustainable, and everyone had to figure out something that they wanted to do that was going to make our school more sustainable. And one group had known that my students had known that I had started a seed library. So one group decided they wanted to do a seed library in our school library. And they located the richmondgrowsseeds.org website that has a create a library page. They didn't know it was my website. I didn't tell them it was my website. And I just let my little 6th graders go through the steps about how to create a library, and they managed to put it together. So it is vetted by 6th graders. They wrote donation letters because this was, 2012, they wrote donation letters and they got donations from seed companies. They created a website, and that's kind of what we've been using as kind of our kind of place. In the meantime, if you're interested in creating a seed library, there's kind of the basic template that my 6th graders used on richmondgrowsseeds.org, the create a library, but now we have a much more robust selection of resources, and you can get that from the seedlibraries.net. And there's a page that says start a seed library. Additionally, if you are interested in kind of, getting support as you go through the process, there is you can sign up for our newsletter, which you can do from the main site of seedlibraries.net, our Cool Beans newsletter. And we also have a forum called Upbeat. So you can ask other people, if they're having similar issues or if they have different suggestions about how to do stuff. So kind of getting started, like I said, we started with local donations because we were just starting from scratch. Sometimes people can contact local nurseries or hardware stores, especially at the end of the year, because once a seed packet gets a stamp on it, a year date, once it gets put in a specific, an individual packet, it has to be sold by that year, even though the seeds might still be viable. And we do have some resources about knowing how long seeds are viable for. So we use that to kind of clean out our collection, like alliums, like things like onions have to be pretty much tossed almost every year. Their germination rate goes down really low, whereas tomatoes and squash are going to last, a bit longer. Also getting master gardeners involved. They need to have a certain number of hours that they volunteer every year. And a lot of them like to get involved in school projects. They can also do seed saving or help. They also have access to a lot of donated seeds as well. So, or they can even help teach with some classes if you want, a specific lesson taught. And, in terms of getting seeds, if you have access to a garden like Lexi does, or I do, although we don't have water, as I mentioned, growing your own is the, hands down the best thing because kids are just so engaged in being able to grow their own food. We've also been doing a Grow a Row program. So we have been inviting parents to grow and families to grow specific things in our collection. And there's a link here on our slideshow. And as I said, I'm going to share that out. And then there's also one on the seedlibraries.net. So if you want to just kind of see what a Grow a Row program might look like. But right now I have a bunch of families growing out kale and some of the winter crops that we can grow here in the Bay Area. And then once you get started, you have to maintain it. So that's another thing to think about in the whole process. It's one thing to get launched, it's another thing to keep it going. And I loved the Berkeley Ecology Center, Basel. They've been going since, 2000. I think they've been going 22 years now. And they just made a really low maintenance system. And as someone who teaches full-time and does this on top of that and other things, and grows my own food, I was just like low maintenance. So we moved to jars, and also we had a mice infestation too. So that was another reason to go for that. And so we just do a lot of jars. And one of the things we do, I don't know if you can see there. Oopsie, and I've got my little, that's going to be, you can't see my jar because it's the weird. Okay, well, I'll put in. Oh, well, so we have a jar, and in the jar, right there, in the jar, we have like the label on the top so you can see it with the year so we know when it is. And then inside of the jar, we actually have extra labels. So when kids take them out, it is pre-printed with all the information that they need so that it's a well-written label before they go home. Sometimes we have special things that have, ooh, you can't see that, barcodes. I'll put it in front of my face. Now I know where to put it. So this one has a story with it. And so this has a barcode. But this, we don't do this very often. This is for special stuff. So this is our seed of the month this month. We have an orientation video, and you can see where we have the print label stuff, get parents involved in organizing stuff. And then we have more resources on maintaining a seed library. Getting kids involved. Obviously, that's where we want to do it. I do have seed librarians. So I have a little job. People fill in a Google form and they can become a seed librarian. And this is I have a really great crew this year. And one of my seed librarians just on her own made this little infographic. You can also get parents involved. You can make it a club, community service opportunities. So I've had kids like packing seeds forever and a day, doing community service. So there's lots of different ways you can kind of get people involved to make it more sustainable, more enjoyable, and also get more people involved. Like I have, a number of kids that just love plants, and they are super excited to be seed librarians. And about the curriculum connections, there's so many places in the curriculum where this can connect. I mean, you heard Lexi with everything from the kids and how they're engaging it from everywhere from, the younger grades up to the older grades. In the middle school, and this could also go upper elementary, even to high school, is some language arts connection. So in our school, the language arts teachers they read Seed Folks, which is a lovely book if you haven't read it yourself. Super easy read. Each chapter is a different character, and they come together as this kind of like non-connected community into creating a community garden. And it's really lovely how each person's story interweaves into kind of coming together to make this community space that they all cherish and all kind of connect with. So our students, so I just put in some of the links. And once again, you'll get a link to this presentation that will all be clickable. So there's like a pre-survey, and there's just about people's attitudes about diversity. And it's not just diversity of people, but also diversity of seeds. That's super important in our context as well. And then just with like the teachers' lessons on what they did and just walking them through. And then at the end, their final product is the kids make this character book, picking one of the characters. I've heard some other, they've also one year made seed packets. So I was able to provide some seeds from some specific areas. And so they kind of made a packet based on, that seed, that was kind of connected in with the art teacher. And let's see, in terms of science curriculum, so I put in just some of my lessons so that people that are science teachers, kind of know not everyone's a science teacher here, would have access to that. So we do in the middle school, and I'm doing 6th grade this year, we're doing like a bean dissection. We do germination with popcorn. I just buy, popcorn from the grocery store just so they can see the process of how do you test to see if seeds are viable. we also do a flower dissection. And then we have a reading around pollination and the importance of pollination. And then just different pollinators. And we also do a thing about like why pollination matters and just like, can you tell? Because I think I just remember from my own like 10th grade biology is we learned all this genetics, but it wasn't rooted in anything that was connected to anything. And when the kids are actually in the garden and they're learning about stuff and they're just like, oh, this plant is crossed and what that means, it's much more meaningful when you talk about genetics than just doing Punnett squares without any real life applications. And so we do a whole thing, which is a dichotomous key about why pollination matters. And it's like, if you have this parent and this parent, what are the offspring? What's going to happen with the offspring? Are they going to look like the parents or not? So it gives them a sense of what we should be paying attention to when we're actually saving seeds. Yeah, it's just makes a dichotomous key a little bit more meaningful if you're in the science world. We also link it to food security. And so with the kind of some of the science standards, one of the things we want to talk about is earth and is human interaction and solutions. So we're talking about how is what we're doing in the garden impacting and how can it have meaning in terms of climate solutions. So we're spending a lot of time with that as a focal point because it's something that can give kids hope and choice and involvement and so we think it's a really important aspect of getting the kids involved in seed saving because they can actually feel like, oh, I'm doing something that's creating something that's more climate resilient, that's tasty, that's delicious, that's fun. So it kind of weaves in a lot of those pieces, but they also understand that this is now more adapted to our soils. It's adapted to our wacky, weather and such. I also do a seed saving tutorial with the kids. So at the end of the year, after they've learned about seed saving, they have an option of doing either climate adaptation video or a PSA about why is it important to save seeds. And they also can do a seed saving tutorial about how to save seeds. So that's one of the things, and we put it out in the world. So these are things that we put not only on our own website, but we've shared them with other organizations, and they've shared about, the kid videos about how to save seeds. So it's a nice way for the kids to feel like they have a meaningful, they're not just making a project for the teacher, but it's actually getting out to the community and making a difference. And just kind of lastly, kind of before we get into the Q&A, really the importance of thinking beyond genetics. So as I said, it's one thing just to do like Punnett squares if you're a science teacher, but it's another thing to think about like, why is what we're doing important? The food security, the resilience. Some of you may have seen the infographic that shows in the last 100 years, we've lost over 90% of our commercial varieties. Many of them are now extinct. And so because nobody are not available anymore, maybe someone's growing them somewhere, but for the most part, most of those varieties are gone. And that crop diversity and biodiversity are super important. And where that's going to be happening is in the school gardens and the home gardens. So the more we can do this, plant saving and plant breeding in our own school gardens, that's going to be super powerful. So we do a lot with plant breeding. So I said we create the library is one thing, but we've also done some things around, we did some plant breeding. We planted a number of popcorn varieties, and then popcorn will just interbreed, and we were just letting it, what we call promiscuously pollinate. And then the kids got to test the popcorn, and that was super exciting for them. We were doing some wheat breeding. There's an evolutionary wheat breeding project where it's like a mix of, I think, like 5,000 varieties. We stopped doing that one just because of concerns around gluten, but we also do a bean breeding project from Carol Deppy, where it's a mix of 2 different species, and the kids got to just select for maximum diversity. So they just, as noted, when they open up the bean pods, super, super interesting. And then lastly, if you are interested in maybe being part of a larger project, Seed Savers Exchange has some community science where you can trial some of the things from their collection. So this is not seed saving, but it's actually for the purposes of seeing if you like it. So they have an adapt program, and it closes this upcoming Friday. So it closes February 17th. And they're offering, like, if you are interested in being part of this adapt program, they'll send you 3 varieties from their collection, like 3 beet varieties, with the idea of you testing them, tasting them, seeing if you like them, and then that gives them some information about, do they want to continue that in their collection and breed that out and make that available in their you know, in their catalog soon, but they're needing community support to do that. And then they also have a breeding project. So if you're not ready to kind of try your own breeding project, you are welcome to kind of go along with one of the ones they're doing, and then they can kind of guide you through what you would be looking through, how to trial it, how to plant it. And that makes the kids also feel like they're part of a larger piece supporting people. So that is my piece. And I think we're going to open it up to questions and answers at this point. So if you have questions for myself or Lexi, you are welcome to put them in the chat or in the Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing for now. Are there any questions? And do we have a Q&A section or just the chat section? And did you see any questions at all?
There was one question about can these principles be adapted for a college library, and a couple of people, including me, chimed in and said yes, by all means. And I think that the Seed Library list on Rebecca's website includes a lot of those.
Yeah, and we would really like to, because you know, school libraries and college libraries definitely have some interesting differences from ones that are maybe publicly available. You know, one in our focus, you know, being on education, but also sometimes in our access. We're wanting to kind of create, we have on the seedlibraries.net, we have a school library resource, but we really want to make that more robust in terms of like, how do we support people? Because I know there's some books out there, there's like the A through Z of libraries, and I know Seed Libraries is in there, but I believe there's also a book that's specifically around academic seed library. So there's definitely some papers, and I have a list of researchers that have done work on seed libraries, and some of that is, you know, specifically around, you know, how do we make it more, you know, aligned with the curriculum that's, you know, horticulture or other departments that might be linked in there.
I did a presentation with my fellow seed librarians where I work at a little conference that I could probably share with you, Rebecca, to put on.
Great. Okay, so I see a couple questions. Do you address PVP, so that's a plant variety protection seeds, with students in your libraries? Yes. So we do have a note that we don't accept. I mean, mostly we're growing our own stuff, but we pay attention to the fact. So PVP, or plant variety protection, really protects breeders that are doing traditional plant breeding and their rights. And we obviously want to respect that. We mostly will use things that are from the Open Seed Initiative, the Open Seed Source Initiative, OSSI. So we're doing a lot with that. And then we're also doing a lot of, right now, because we want to, it's hard for us to do things like broccoli or some of the brassicas and have them come out true to type or like the parent. So we've been a lot more interested, and it's, you know, so what we're doing a lot more of right now is working with land races, and there is a land racing chat later. And these are things that are openly pollinated, that are promiscuously pollinated, which is, we're planting, like in our school garden, we have 14 varieties of kale and all of their crosses that we got from Experimental Farm Network. And, you know, what gets eaten by the bugs doesn't get saved. And so we're really accelerating climate adaptation and also having really a wonderful diversity of food. And Lexi, I think the next one is for you.
All right, so let's see, how do you get a hydroponics garden funded at your school? So there's a couple of, so for the tower gardens, those were donations from parents. There's, I think the company is Juice Plus, and we had parents who had tower gardens in their homes and then realized that they didn't want them and passed them on to us. For the hydroponic farm, for the shipping container, that was actually a really big fundraiser that we did. Every year we have an auction, and that was the theme of the auction, was raising money for it. We bought the shipping container. There's a company called Crop Box, and that is who we use their services. We hired them to get a refrigerated shipping container, got it, rebuild one side with hydroponics. And then what is unusual about ours is that one whole length, we took out the walls and replaced it with windows so that people can walk by and take a look as to what's going on inside the shipping container. In Denver, we have dozens of shipping container farms, and they look like shipping containers, and you wouldn't realize what's in there until you start asking or maybe seeing a little sign. So that's one of the great things. One of the things I really, really like about our shipping container hydroponic farm is that anyone can walk by and look in. Because of the issue of risk of pest infestation, it's limited who can go in there. The students who go in there regularly are only middle schoolers. They take we call it a vertical farm class, where they grow food with our vertical farmer, and they actually run a business. They run a CSA selling shares for the leafy greens that they grow in there.
Great. And then we have a question. We want to start schools, a seed library for a school district garden educators for their individual school gardens. Do you have any suggestions? Are you talking about, so we want to start a seed library for our school district garden educators. So it's just would be away from the individual schools, or for everybody? Wasn't quite clear on the question. But I would say the more people you can get involved from the ground up in it, the more likely it is to be sustainable. So if it's on one person organizing it, just for schools. Okay. So so we want to start schools. If you're trying to get it, I mean, I would say like, it would be nice. I know like here we have a number of school garden coordinators that get together and meet, and they're kind of doing it together. So it's not just one school library doing it together. But when you do it more if you have multiple schools, and it sounds like you might, doing it more as a collaborative project, so that if I'm growing this type of bean and we have a lot of this excess bean and someone else grew a different type of bean, then at the end of the season, we can kind of like switch, and then we all have a little bit more selection. Maybe not overwhelming people with 15 lettuce varieties, although I know we do. but we also middle school, but also just having that ability to kind of like share extra seeds, share extra resources. It's nice if you can kind of do it more as a collaborative project and come in together and, maybe do a training, even if it's, just an hour or two, or like a conversation with them online to kind of, what do you need? Who's got what resources?
I can think of two issues. The first is the relationship. So if you are in a school and you want to do a seed library, in the library is a relationship with a librarian. That is so important. About what their comfort level is with
organization.
Yes, organization, how it's run, their involvement. So the school librarian that relationship is so important. And then also finding, so for us, one thing that I would like us to do is to start reaching out into the Denver metro area to other schools, to seeing who is interested, because we have seeds to share. And I think it makes it a little less intimidating for people to share with them, to help them start up their seed library. Also realizing that what works for us in terms of organization doesn't necessarily work for all other schools that are interested.
Yeah, I want to echo that. It's really important to have a good relationship with your librarian. Like ours really likes things very super nice and tidy. And sometimes, middle school kids just aren't super neat and tidy. And so I have, my little seed librarians, they love to go in, and I'm just like, just go in once a week and just kind of tidy stuff up. We used to have after school library hours, but there was a budget cut. And so we don't have after school hours. So what our library used to be more available to parents really isn't anymore. And so that's been kind of a big shift for us this past year. So that just answered Angela's question. And so what we were thinking about is we've got the grow out program. So we have some specific things that people can grow, but that's for seed. And then when we have some evening events, sometimes I'll have the kids bring out a couple of the stuff so that it's available. So for example, back to school night, not back to school night, but open house at the end of the year, right when it's kind of the beginning of the really big growing season, we'll have the kids in that evening have a table so parents can do that, or what can let them go into the library that evening.
And for us, parents are able to come and get seed directly. At the end of the day, the library is always open for a minimum of half an hour, and that gives a chance for parents to come in. One other thing is that for students, I do limit the ability to check out seed. It starts in March. One thing in the past when it was seed envelopes is in early December, students would get really excited and just start grabbing envelopes. And so my desk is located right near the seed library, so that I'm having conversations with the students about like, it looks like you've just grabbed 25 pepper seed packets. What are your plans for that? And then walking them through so that they actually make the realization of how they're going to use it.
Yeah. They can get super enthusiastic about checking out seeds and not realizing space and time. And I don't, you can't quite see it, but they're on the right hand side. There's this green thing, and it's our Plant Now guide. So we have a Plant Now guide that says this is what you can plant in the Bay Area at this time, and the things that are in green these are things you could actually plant that would have enough time to go all the way to seed. So that also kind of helps guide us what we want to offer for seed. In terms of, I see there's another question, top 3 that your students, processing bean seeds is just, I think that's 1, 2, and 3. Eating is always up there if you have enough for 156 children, which is what I have, but that doesn't always happen. What about you, Lexi? What are some of the?
Yeah, I'd have to say processing bean seeds is hugely popular, and going out into the garden in the fall and seeing, just for them to be able to, for the younger students to go out and that they're encouraged to harvest dried seed flowers. So like calendula, we grew calendula resina, and that's such a great plant because on the plant you can have seeds that are viable, seeds that are immature, so that the students learn about which seeds that they want to grab and harvest. And then what we do sometimes is harvest one marigold flower that's gone to seed, and then have the students, if they're able to, count how many seeds are in one flower head. That's also been hugely popular because students get to show off how high they can count for the younger students, and then also just be amazed by how many seeds are just in that one seed head.
That probably one is not one of the ones for the college people.
Yeah.
But I think also, obviously if you have a garden and you can take them out, the planting is just, they love to just get their hands in the dirt. And my kids are excited when we, pull weeds for a period. We do not do any tracking I've had people that have offered to track for us. And I was just like, I do not have the bandwidth, or we do not have the bandwidth this is with Richmond Grows, to follow through on that. So like I said, I'm just like, it's in a jar, it's got a label, pull out your own labels. And we do have a membership form where people can sign in and sign out. And then we put that the kids just type that onto a spreadsheet so we can email people, but we're just super low maintenance. And once again, different people are trying to do different things. We're going to obviously do more data tracking when it comes to our breeding projects, but not for checkout. Any recommendations or resources for more advanced seed taking techniques to work with middle schools? Yeah. So I would say like I would definitely be interested if you to check on to the ADAPT program and sign up with those people. Actually, no, the breeding project. Do the breeding project. I would also look into the Experimental Farm Network. So there's on the Experimental Farm Network, and Nate Kleinman is speaking today on the climate as seeds as a way to climate adapt. And they have some projects you can sign up for. So if you want to be part of a community breeding project, they have a number of different spots where people can participate, and people around the country are doing it, and they're doing trials and tests, and you can see what's happening in this region of the world versus this other part. This is probably, oops, I got to put it in front of my face here. Oh, no, I disappeared. Oh, so annoying. Okay, there we go. The seed garden, and this is put up on Seed Savers Exchange. This has really coffee table, but quality print, but just one of the best books out there about seed saving. And like I said, right now we're just letting everything. I mean, I used to be so finicky about, hand pollinating and, labeling anything that could possibly be cross pollinated. And now I'm just like, let things go promiscuously pollinated. And, let's mix up the genetics. Let's explore. Let's see what we like. Let's save what we like. Let the other stuff just, compost. And as I mentioned, if you're interested in checking out Joseph Lofthouse's book, or Joseph Lofthouse, who's doing land-raised gardening, there's also a website. There's also a group of people that are doing land-raised gardening, doing plant breeding, and super, these are some major plant geeks, but they're also getting they're getting unusual genetic varieties. They're getting wild tomatoes and mixing them with, commercial varieties and coming up with different flavors and stuff. So it's super exciting to see what they're doing. Do you have enough space at your school for all the seed jars? I mean, I don't know if you saw the one picture in the beginning of my slideshow, but I've got, it's just a big, what do you call it? Shelving unit. So yeah, we have plenty of space. I don't know what Lexi's system is.
Yeah, we have enough space on our shelves right now for the seed jars. For the returning seed intake process. So for us, so far, we've just had families bring in tomato seeds and flower seeds. When we get to that point, I'm pretty sure I will decline squash seeds just because of whereas it's great because of the promiscuous pollination. I think at this point in our stage of the library, I want to make sure that when we have squash seeds that they are going to grow true to type.
Yeah, I think the main thing to really talk about that is it's label. Like, you have to be really, so in the past, we definitely did not. And I'd say we probably still would not accept just random squash seeds that someone donated. But like the ones that we are offering that are promiscuously pollinated, we know that they were an intentional cross of 40 different types of butternut squashes, or something like that. So we know what they are. And granted, maybe some other genetics got in there that wasn't a butternut type squash, but for the most part, we know that this is what we're starting with, and we had that as a starting point. So yeah, I would not at this point also take just random squash from someone, but we label it that this is, you're going on this journey with us, and like save what you like and tell us what you liked about it, and the rest of it, don't save those seeds and return them.
All right, I can answer a few. Yes, we have grown red amaranth and it's fantastic. We saved seed, but we didn't really need to because a lot of it has self-seeded. Also, just the height of the plant is pretty, for our younger students, they really like that. The worms in the classroom. So we get red wigglers. If you go on Gardener's Supply, I think their website is gardeners.com. They sell worm farm composter bins, and that's what we got. We bought 3 of them. They are, not sure maybe if I could enter that in the chat in a moment. I can enter the link in the chat. So they're multi-tiered bins that made out of plastic. They stay in the classroom, and we put in shredded paper and add water to get it kind of damp, put in red wigglers, and then the students will once a week or once every 10 days put in food scraps, so banana peels and apple cores and stuff for the worms to eat, and then they save the worm castings to use in the garden.
And Debbie, have you put in the I haven't been paying attention, the survey for this? Okay, great, thank you. I've been not being able to track everything. And also just to kind of say, like, I know Lexi has, some special collections with the fiber plant. So that's another thing that you could really think about with your own seed library. We have a native section that's really, pretty robust in our collection. There is a talk today about native plants, and they did we also have some resources on the seedlibraries.net about how to put in a natives collection. There's dye plants. Some people have more pollinator plants. So really, if you have a particular interest in something, that's also something you can, focus on in terms of your seed library. And let's see.
I'm gonna, oh, did someone did put in the link for the seed garden book. The seed garden book is fantastic. I also highly recommend it.
Yeah. And I do want to, like I said, we're hoping to be able to, have some more resources, and if people that have seed libraries open in schools, I'll probably will send out, I'm trying to see if I can find it now, a survey just about what you're doing, so that we can kind of pull from people that are already doing this work, so that we're not having to reinvent the wheel. And you can see, oh, these are some of the lessons that someone else did, or this is how someone did it in, a high school, in a high school or a college. So I will be sending an email after the summit about just a survey, just saying, if you've opened, what are you doing? And so that other people can benefit from that. And Lexi, do you want to share your screen just so we can go over the last kind of closing slides, or do you want me to do that?
You want to do that?
Sure.
While you're pulling that up, there was one other resource that has been really helpful for us, and it's seed cleaning screens. It's a set of 5. They're sold by Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, and they're square screens with varying size. Like the first screen has the largest size holes for when and then each screen, the holes get smaller and smaller. So Southern Exposure Seed Exchange.
And how many screens did you have? How big is your set?
5.
Okay, so and I think Horizon Herbs sells a 7 seed one. Yeah, so there's but it's a nice, if you have any large quantity, it's good. And if you don't, just colanders and wind. So just kind of in closing, thank you so much for being interested in seed libraries and schools and sharing that with your students. We are hoping after this to kind of launch this program. It's called 1 Million Seed Savers Campaign, trying to get 1 million seed savers involved. And obviously, if we can get young people involved, this is where we're going to make the biggest difference. Getting, and their parents are going to come along with them.